keep yourself on mute unless you are addressing the council. And with that, I am going to hand it over to our vice chair, and that is Mr. Paul Butkus.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Paul Butkus, recently appointed Vice Chair of the Connecticut Historic Preservation Council. I'm calling to order the May 3rd, 2023 HPC meeting. Attending this morning are the following council members: Beth Ackley, Vincentia Aducii, Beth Burgess, myself, Paul Butkus, Marguerite Carnell, Tom Elmore, Leah Glazer, Andy Horowitz, Sarah Nelson, and Sarah Sportman. A quorum is therefore present. The following is the Historic Preservation Council's format and review of public comment procedures. Given the online format of today's meeting, and for those who are visitors today, I want to review and explain our procedures. The order of presentation. I'll read each motion and ask for the motion to be moved and seconded. Staff will present the agenda item to the council, and council members will have an opportunity to ask questions. If called upon by staff, a representative of the organization may offer statements or address the council's questions. For members of the public who wish to speak to the agenda item, we ask that you identify yourself and your affiliation. After all questions have been addressed and statements made, a roll call vote will be taken. If members of the public have letters and or written statements they wish to submit to the record, please email them to Jonathan Kinney at ct.gov. That's JONATHAN.Kinney, KINNEY, at ct.gov. The Historic Preservation Council takes statements from members of the public but does not respond to questions. Lastly, please only address the particular agenda item being addressed at that time. The following is the Historic Preservation Council's policy regarding conflict of interest. The Historic Preservation Council votes on matters which provide leadership, service, and economic benefits to property owners, consultants, local governments, and not-for-profit organizations. Given this responsibility and to maintain the highest professional standards in the discharge of our duties, it's important to maintain a strong code of ethics for all council members and department employees. In order to avoid possible violations of the Department of Economic and Community Development Ethics Statement, it's necessary for the council to be aware of any situations in which there's a real, potential, or apparent conflict of interest involving anyone here. Conflict of interest may occur when a public official's participation in agency matters results in personal financial gain. All council and staff have been provided a copy of the Department of Economic Community Development Ethics Statement and governing state statutes. Having reviewed them in today's agenda, members of the council and staff are now asked to disclose any affiliation with entities or projects that may create a conflict of interest as defined by the agency policy and pursuant to Connecticut General Statute 1-79 through 1-89, entitled Code of Ethics for Public Officials. Once disclosed, the member or staff may recuse themselves from that particular agenda item. Having read the statement, are there any council or staff members who would like to disclose a conflict of interest to any of the items on today's agenda? Tom Elmore?
Yeah, Paul, I'm going to need to recuse myself from 5B1, the Blauhaus Gardens and Foundations. While I'm not financially invested in this application, I have been advising the group. So I think it best that I just recuse myself.
Thank you, Tom. Beth Ackley?
Yes, I would like to recuse myself from item 5B4, the Stanton Davis Homestead. I worked on that project quite a while ago, but also, and I'm not working on it at the moment, but think it's best to recuse myself.
Thank you. A lot of hands up. Sarah Sportman.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to recuse myself from voting on the state register nomination for the Avon Brian Jones site due to my past involvement with the project and also the involvement of my spouse. But I would like to stay on just in case there are any archaeological questions that committee members have that I might be able to help with, if that's all right.
Thank you, Sarah. I think that would be appropriate to be available for questions. Sarah Nelson.
Thank you. I don't believe that this is a conflict of interest, but I wanted to disclose with regard to agenda item 5B1 that I had been invited to participate in the roundtable discussion for the Blauhaus and Gardens Foundation last summer, but was not able to. And I have not had any participation in any of the discussions currently or this application, but just wanted to disclose that. But I leave it to the chair to determine if that constitutes a conflict.
I think that should be fine, that you stay involved. Thank you for pointing it out. Marguerite?
Yes, I'm going to recuse myself from item 6B2, the state register nomination for the Brian D. Jones site. I was not involved in the preparation of that nomination, but it was prepared by my firm.
Thank you. Tom, is your hand still raised?
No, I just don't know how to turn it off.
Okay.
Oh, there it goes, lower hand. I'm new to this.
Okay,
Got it.
we're on a couple of screens. Anyone else have their, don't see any. Okay. Recused members are asked to leave the meeting platform, and staff will send a text message to members when they return to the meeting. Please make sure that staff have your cell numbers so they can get in touch with you via text message. That brings us to item 4 on our agenda, review and approval of minutes and transcripts. 4A, the meeting minutes from the April 5th, 2023 meeting. The meeting minutes were provided to the council members via an email on April 28th from Jonathan Kinney. I believe Tom had some edits that were submitted. Are there any other comments or revisions to the minutes? Sarah Nelson?
Thank you, Paul. And this may be something that Tom already submitted, but on page 3, and it would be with regard to the Branford Land Trust, down at the bottom of the second full paragraph, Chairman Elmore agreed and stated that council could use this application as an example in the future. I believe the intention was in the future for small scale projects. Tom,
Yes.
was that your
Yes.
intention?
That was
Okay.
the intention. Yes, thank you,
Okay.
Sam.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
And any other recommend, Marguerite?
Yes, I previously submitted some corrections in addition to Tom Elmore and Jonathan Kinney. Most of them were minor in nature. I also went into a bit more detail about the comments that Todd Bryant made at the end of the meeting, as I felt that they were valid.
Thank you.
Thank you. I noticed one thing, Jonathan, on that same item. Is it possible to add the specific building address rather than just referring to his concerns about this building? Just so
Certainly.
if someone's reading it, it'll tie
Yeah,
it back to a specific project.
Several council members had commented on that portion. I'm going to add a little bit more detail into that area just to flesh it out a little bit.
Okay. And anyone else? The council? Hearing none. I request a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Marguerite, so moved.
Second, Beth Burgess.
Okay, and we have a roll call vote. Beth Ackley,
Aye.
Vincenzia.
Abstain.
Okay. Beth Burgess.
Aye.
I'll abstain. Marguerite Cornell.
Aye.
Tom Elmore.
Aye.
Leah Glazer.
Aye.
Andy Horowitz.
Aye.
Sarah Nelson.
Aye.
And Sarah Sportman.
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 yeas and 2 abstentions. Thank you very much. Item 4B, 4B. The transcript part 2 from the December 7th meeting. A revised transcript has been received by SHPO but has not been provided to the council for review. It's also been requested that both the transcript and the recording be made available to council members prior to voting on this the acceptance of this transcript. Therefore, may I have a motion to recall this to the table for discussion and then immediately table it until the next month's meeting?
This is Sarah Nelson. I'll make a motion to recall the transcript to the table and to table review of the transcript to the June, I believe it's the 7th meeting, to allow council to have the opportunity to review all material.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Tom, second.
Thank you. Would you do a roll call vote? Beth Ackley,
Aye.
Vincenzia,
Aye.
Beth Burgess,
Aye.
I'll abstain. Marguerite Carnell,
Aye.
Tom Elmore,
Aye.
Leah Glazer,
Aye.
Andy Horowitz,
Aye.
Sarah Nelson,
Aye.
and Sarah Sportman.
Aye.
The motion carries. 9 yeas and 1 abstention. Thank you very much.
Paul, I'm going to step out.
Thank you, Tom. Jonathan, you'll text him when we're done.
I will. Thank you.
Okay. Item 5, State Historic Preservation Grant action items. Item A, unfinished action item. Certified Local Government Historic Preservation Enhancement Grant for the town of Enfield. Consulting services to prepare a National Register nomination for 159 Pearl Street, Enfield, which had been tabled at the 4/5/23 meeting. By a 2/3 vote, we can recall this to the table. Can I have a motion? Sarah Nelson.
Marguerite, second.
Thank you. And we have to vote. Beth Ackley. To recall.
Aye.
Okay. Vincenzia.
Aye.
Beth Burgess.
Aye.
I will abstain. Marguerite.
Aye.
Tom Elmore is recused. Leah Glazer.
Aye.
Andy Horowitz.
Aye.
Sarah Nelson.
Aye.
And Sarah Sportman.
Aye.
The motion carries. Guess Aaron
Now it'll be me, Mary.
or Mary. Thank you, Mary.
Good morning, everybody. So yes, this was tabled from the April meeting. It was originally presented as a one application for 2 projects, a National Register nomination and a condition assessment for the subject property. But during the course of conversation, we discovered some technical deficiencies in the application. So after the meeting, we regrouped with the grantee and decided just to move forward with hiring someone to do the National Register nomination, and then applying later for a subsequent condition assessment, which makes sense because you have to be listed anyway or designated, in order to take advantage of pre-development funding. So the budget is based on consultation with our office. We do recommend approval. And I think Nelson Teresa from the town is here to answer any questions that I can't.
Does anyone have a question? Sarah Nelson.
Thank you, Paul. Mary, this isn't a question about the merits. I was just confused by a sentence that kept cropping up in different places in the application about the building being included in the historic resource inventory despite its age. What?
I think what that means is that despite its age, it had not been listed. I mean, yeah, so yeah,
Oh, I see.
and I understand what you're saying is that, for starters, there's only a 50-year threshold, and this obviously exceeds that. But it's for some reason, I guess, was the point of that, that is that it hasn't been listed yet, and it was obviously recommended in the HRI.
Thank you for clarifying.
Sure.
Any other questions? Sarah, your hand's still raised. Okay. All right. So should I read the actual motion before we vote, the way it's written? The Historic Preservation Council votes to award a certified local government historic preservation enhancement grant funded by the Historic Preservation Fund of the Department of the Interior National Park Service to the below listed applicant in the amount shown. All federal and state grant guidelines and requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of the grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Staff recommends approval of the funding. The applicant, Town of Enfield project, consulting services to prepare a National Register nomination for Enfield Public Library, 1914, at 159 Pearl Street, Enfield. Grant amount $12,000. So roll call vote. Beth Ackley,
Aye.
Vincenzia,
Aye.
Beth Burgess.
Aye.
I will abstain. Marguerite Cornell.
Aye.
Tom is recused. Leah Glazer.
Aye.
Andy Horowitz.
Aye.
Sarah Nelson.
Aye.
And Sarah Sportman.
Aye.
The motion carries.
Great, thank you.
Congratulations.
Hey, Paul, this is Jonathan. I just wanted to indicate, I think Tom stepped out one agenda item too early, so he's going to be recused from this one coming up.
Okay. All right. Moving right along. So item 5, historic preservation grants, new action items. Item 5B1, survey and planning grant for the Blau House and Gardens Foundation, Inc. Consulting services to prepare a state register nomination for 8 Bayberry Ridge Road in Westport. Grant amount $8,500. Can I have a motion to bring this up for discussion?
So moved, Beth Burgess.
Marguerite, second.
Thank you. And is this you, Mary?
Yeah, sorry. Yes, staff does recommend approval of this application. Both our state and national register coordinators, and I believe an outside, I think Preservation Connecticut, were in conversation with the applicant and settled on the recommendation that they go for state register listing. And the budget is also in consultation with our office. We already have a statewide context for moderns in Connecticut, so we think that's an adequate amount of funding. And excuse me, Robert Cohen is here with the foundation to answer any questions that I can't.
Before I call out, I'll just say it's really nice to see houses coming up for nomination with extensive landscaping, recognized as an integral part of the site. So many of our older properties have been kind of stripped of its kind of historic landscape context. So it's nice that we're being proactive and recognizing these types of intact landscapes. Any questions from council members? Sarah?
This isn't a question. I just wanted to commend the applicant for the depth and the breadth of the information that they brought forward. I thought that this was a fantastic application. And I personally learned a tremendous amount
Thank you.
Any additional comments, questions? Leah?
Yeah, I was just wondering about the whole part about Westport as a more accepting community for Jewish migrants. I would just in the when hiring somebody or in the RFQ, just to I think just a little bit more investigation needs to be done about that, just to see if there's a community there and if that is actually like a strong enough area of significance. There's a lot about Greenwich, but not about Westport. So I just think that needs a little bit more if that's going to be called out as an area of significance.
Great, thank you.
Any additional comments? Seeing none, should we move to a vote? And again, Sarah, just for my benefit, should I read the motion again or, okay.
Paul, I think you didn't read it in its entirety the first time.
Okay. That was the brief agenda description. So I'll read the full motion. The Historic Preservation Council votes to award a survey and planning grant funded by the Community Investment Act of the State of Connecticut to the below listed applicant and the amount shown. All grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of a grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Staff recommends the application for funding. Applicant, Blau House and Gardens Foundation, Inc. The project, consulting services to prepare a state register nomination for Blau House, constructed in 1962 at 8 Bayberry Ridge Road in Westport. Amount of funding, $8,500. Beth Ackley.
Aye.
Vincenzia.
Aye.
Beth Burgess.
Aye.
I will abstain. Marguerite Carnell.
Aye.
Tom Elmore is recused. Leah Glazer.
Aye.
Andy Horowitz.
Aye.
Sarah Nelson.
Aye.
And Sarah Sportman.
Aye.
Great, thank you.
Motion carries. 8 yeas, 1 abstention, and 1 recusal.
Mhm.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay. Okay, our next item is item 5B2, St. Mary's Church at 70 Central Avenue, Norwich. May I have a motion to bring it up for discussion?
Marguerite, so moved.
And a second?
Leah
Anyone?
Glazer, second.
Thank you, Leah. Mary?
Oh, this is Erin.
Or Erin? Sorry, okay, I'm learning.
That's fine. All right, so Circuit Rider Mike Farino made a site visit and saw an urgent need for masonry repairs on the front facade of the building, which was causing unsafe conditions. The church worked quickly to obtain a survey and planning grant, so thank you for approving that, for plans and specifications and other documentation by architect Rick Weiss. They will now need to quickly implement the scope to make the building safe and sound again. And we have a member of the organization here as well as the architect in case there's questions.
Erin, I'll start with a question. The plans that were uploaded for the project were very rudimentary, basically like a key plan. There was really not any information about specific work. There was more information in the cost proposal. So I'm just wondering if that information is forthcoming or what the status of that is.
Well, let's see. I have drawings and long-term preservation plan grouped in there. So let me take a look.
The drawings themselves were progress prints from January 23.
Okay. Okay. Well, I believe they've been completed, so I can always add them. But you know, if we need to table it so that you can review them, I understand.
Okay. Beth Ackley, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, just kind of following on Paul's comment a little bit. I know that the survey and planning grant was for a conditions assessment and then drawings. I wasn't able to, I know the drawings are just schematic at this point that are in the package, but I wasn't able to follow, you know, what the findings were for root causes of problems. And I know there's a lot of Syntec anchors in there, which are pretty heavy duty. And there's a combination of natural stone and cast stone. So I was just wondering if the whoever's here from the project could just give us a rundown of, you know, what the findings were from the conditions assessment, what the root cause was, you know, what the big picture of the project is from a repair point of view.
Yeah, clearly. So I guess we have to.
Hi, it's Rick Weiss. Would you like me to comment?
We don't say something about each line.
We have two people talking at the same time.
Yeah, sorry. It's Rick Weiss, the architect. Would you like me to comment?
Yes, please, Rick.
Yeah, we do have fairly detailed drawings in the package. I'm sorry that those didn't get included initially. But our initial response was focused on make safe conditions and stabilization. There's severe deterioration of the cast stone elements that are distributed over the entire church, but concentrated to a great degree at the top of the 80-foot bell tower. So that was our sort of our first order of business to address those elements that were literally in jeopardy of falling off the parapets of the bell tower. Similarly, other cast stone elements have been shattering and fracturing and releasing fragments in various places. So our first effort was really to deal with the cast stone issues. The natural stone is actually in good shape, and other than needing raking and repointing, that natural stone system is pretty good. Is there anything specifically else that you would like me to comment on?
So just if you could confirm, Rick, the scope of this project appears to be replacement of cast stone where it's imploding. And I see Syntec anchors. Is that intended to, are you using those to reset new stone?
Those are being used primarily to stabilize the existing system. The bell tower consists of a brick masonry shell to which the natural stone and cast stone is applied. So we're trying to, the structural effort is to basically knit together those systems. The brick masonry lining is not well anchored to the outer system itself. And the bell tower is a particularly, if we would call it a lacy stone structure. Think of it as sort of a very tall side table on 4 legs, with the legs being the stone the natural stone buttresses, but they're tall legs. And they are reinforced by this brick lining. So we're addressing cracks, extensive cracking in the granite exterior, and basically, as I say, knitting together this assemblage of natural and cast stone. And Beth, that's correct, where the cast stone has shattered, replacing that material.
Okay. And last question, thank you for all that. Last question, I would imagine, as with most projects like this, the stimulus for all this was water getting in. Are you, as part of this project, also some remediation to where water was getting in to prevent it in the future?
Yes, absolutely. The fissures in the ornamental stone and cast stone have clearly been a conduit for water. There's severe cracking in the all of the decorative elements that top the bell tower, and those fissures go deep into the base masonry supporting those elements. So yes, it's roof flashings. The roof membrane itself needs to be reworked. The drainage planes all need help.
Okay.
And there's been some structural sagging of cast stone elements that has happened clearly over a long period of time. So we're also addressing how to deal with the sort of droop. We're not going to be able to correct that 100%, but there are good ways that we can stabilize it by adding the tensile elements of the Syntec anchors.
Okay. Okay. So it sounds like this is a comprehensive restoration of the tower, including structural, masonry, and other building envelope.
Very much so, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Vincenzo.
Yes, I think actually Richard answered a lot of my questions with the dialogue with Beth, but it was very noticeable that the budget seems off, and then I noticed that you have just the schematics design. So I was wondering if you had more of a construction documents, but I think you answered that question. It was not included in this. So my only concern was that the budget did not seem very clear. It also seemed very low, looking at the pictures and all of the associated work that Beth just mentioned. I also noticed there was no contingency unless there's a budget that you had the contingency, and I just didn't see that. So yes, my only two concerns was that you should look at the contingency. You have a schematics design, and if there is a construction documents, that makes sense why your budget is not complete yet. But Richard, are you gonna update the budget based on your construction documents? Just to get a better picture of the overall budget. Okay.
Yes, we have that documentation available now, and we will provide that to SHPO.
The other thing to consider is that they are asking for the full 200,000, and I believe the project is, I think, above $500,000 just initially. So that might be why they didn't include a contingency in their grant amount.
Okay, because I saw two budgets, the budget that I thought was requested and then the overall budget. So it's more than the 200. Okay, so that makes a lot more sense.
Right, I saw a $680,000 amount listed in one part of the application. So thank you. Tom Elmore.
Aaron, a quick question for you. On page 17 of 31 in the application, is a cost estimate for Temple Beth Israel. And then I'm wondering if that just slid in there by accident, or if you had it for a holding spot for something pertaining to this project.
No, that was an error on my part.
Okay. Thank you.
So I think we should enter the updated documents into the record, so they are available. But I don't think we have to necessarily review them at this point. But they should be included. Okay, if there are any more questions or comments, if not, I'll read the full motion. The Historic Preservation Council votes to award a Historic Restoration Fund grant funded by the Community Investment Act to the State of Connecticut to the below listed applicant and the amount shown. All grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of a grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Staff recommends the application for funding. Applicant, St. Mary's Church, 70 Central Avenue, Norwich, Connecticut. Project restoration and structural stabilization of the bell tower's masonry, ornamental minarets, metal flashing, and slate roof. Restoration of the facade masonry. Amount of the grant, $200,000. I'd like to take a roll call vote. Beth Ackley.
Aye.
Vincenzo.
Aye.
I will abstain. Marguerite Carnell.
Aye.
Wait, Paul, can I sneak in there and say aye?
Beth Burgess, sorry.
No worries. Thanks.
Apologies. This table didn't get copied over in my notes. Tom Elmore.
Aye.
Leah Glazer.
Aye.
Andy Horowitz.
Aye.
Sarah Nelson.
Aye.
And Sarah Sportman.
Aye.
Motion passes. Is it nine yeas and 1 abstention? Thank you and good luck.
Thank you.
Okay. Our next item is 5B3, Historic Restoration Fund, Temple Beth Israel Preservation Society, 39 Killingly Drive, Danielson, for new roof sheathing, waterproofing membrane, and asphalt shingle roof. Could I have a motion to bring this to the discussion?
Marguerite, so
Glazer, so
moved.
moved.
And the second, Marguerite, and then a second by
Tom?
Thank you, Tom. Discussion?
This is Erin, thank you. This is one of the first modern synagogues built in Connecticut. They are in need of a grant for a new roof as there are active leaks. The synagogue is maintained by a preservation society who are very dedicated and committed to caring for the building. And Norman is on from the organization for any questions.
Erin, just a question. There are 2 different sets of numbers for the project. One included a much larger number for the roofing amount, plus other trim work and things like that. But there's only one quote for the actual roofing portion, which was much lower than what was shown in the first budget. So I just want some clarification as to where the numbers are coming from.
Sure, I'm just pulling up the application. Norman, do you have any comments about the budget based on the quotes that you were able to get? Just looking at the application. 1 second.
Yes, thank you. We reached out to, I think it was 3 or 4, maybe even 5 different roofers. And we received quotes ranging from a low of the low 20s to upward of $32,000 or $33,000. Those did not include certain decking repairs, eaves repairs, and they did not include complete repointing and reflashing of the chimney. So what I prepared as a proposed budget was really an amalgamation of information that I gathered from the 4 or 5 different quotes that we got, putting together a realistic estimate of what the actual work would run. So I apologize for the some level of ambiguity, but we took great care to try to be as accurate as possible. Of course, recognizing also that once you tear open a roof, you may find surprises. We didn't really allow very much for those surprises, but I suspect we will be surprised.
Right. Aaron, was page 26 and 27 of the application packet. The larger total project budget seems more realistic than the one quote from Romeo Hart LLC. One other question while I have the floor. The conditions assessment talks about the cross section through the roof structure being 2x6 decking with approximately 3.5-inch void for insulation and then sheathing on top. There was no mention, and maybe it's covered just in the larger number on that broader budget, but at this point we don't know what the insulation is in that void. It's a filled cavity, very minimal. Things like putting a ridge vent don't really make sense when it's not a soffit eaves and that type of sandwich system. So be conscious of that, and also make sure that there's provisions to replace any damaged insulation where there were active leaks. And depending on how it was run, it could be that the leak was coming through in the interior quite a distance from where the actual water was entering through the sheathing. So that needs to be carefully looked at when you start peeling things off as to what that migration across the roof may have been. Other questions? I see Tom's hand is raised.
Yeah, Norman, I have a question for you, and it's building on what the conversation is right now. If when the roof is pulled off and you find unknown amounts of work that need to be undertaken, does your temple have the ability to financially take on that work, or do you expect to need to come back to us and SHPO for an increased amount of funding?
We're in the midst of a major capital campaign right now, and we've actually gotten a very strong start. So in addition to a sizable endowment that we have and have not touched, I'm pretty confident that, the surprises that I referred to earlier and the point to which you refer, I'm confident that we can handle it.
Okay, now that's fine. And I just bring it up because I haven't seen you here, and if I have, I apologize. But we have brought back applicants for increased funding in the past, just so you know.
I'll avail myself of that opportunity should the need arise. I appreciate your mentioning it.
Thank you.
Sarah Nelson.
Thank you, Paul. Just a question for Norman. You mentioned that the water is getting in. I wanted to just ask you, have you tested the air quality for molds at this point?
We have not. We have not.
So just something to tuck away in the back of your mind. You're obviously going to be taking the building apart, putting it back together again, the roof that is, but with the congregation in the building, and I don't know how many other sort of groups use your facility, but you would want to test because molds have a way of getting into systems like HVAC systems.
Sure, we will make a point of doing that. I'm glad you raised that. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Don't see any other hands raised. Okay. I'll read the full motion. The Historic Preservation Council votes to award a Historic Restoration Fund grant funded by the Community Investment Act of the State of Connecticut to the below listed applicant and the amount shown. All grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of a grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Staff recommends the application for funding for the applicant, Temple Beth Israel Preservation Society, Inc., 39 Killingley Drive, Danielson, Connecticut. Project: new roof sheathing, waterproof membrane, and asphalt roof. Amount funding $24,525. Beth Ackley,
Aye.
Vincenzia,
Aye.
Beth Burgess,
Aye.
I'll abstain. Marguerite Carnell,
Aye.
Tom Elmore. Tom, you're muted.
He's frozen.
He's frozen.
Oh, he's frozen. Tom, are you still there?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you an aye?
Aye, yes. Can you hear me?
You were frozen.
All right.
Leah Glazer,
Aye.
Andy Horowitz,
Aye.
Sarah Nelson,
Aye.
and Sarah Sportman.
Aye.
The motion passes 9 yeas, 1 abstention. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
and good luck with your project.
Thank you very much.
Moving right along, item 5B4. Historic Restoration Fund for Stanton Davis Homestead Museum. I believe, Beth, you're recusing yourself.
I am.
from this?
I will see you in a little bit.
Thank you very much. Can I have a motion to bring this to the table?
So moved, Paul. It's Beth Burgess.
Thank you. In a second.
VI second.
Thank you. Erin?
Sorry.
Thank you. So our office has been involved in the restoration of the building and its archaeology for many years. There is a current easement on the building. So our easement manager, Julie Carmelick, and circuit rider, Mike Farino, and myself made a site visit to view the work being done on the cheese room. The grant for structural repairs and new roofs on the home and the cheese really project a huge head start and will allow the major interior restoration to begin next.
Quick question, Erin. Within the drawings, I know that they're stamped issued for pricing and not for construction in 2017. Have there been updates since then, or any new discoveries, changes in scope, kind of thing?
Their architect is on the call. I believe they are following somewhat updated drawings. See, is Gil here? I believe.
Hello, Robert Leach speaking.
Oh, great.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Robert Leach, architect speaking. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
The question was, have there been any significant changes to the scope of work since the 2017 set of drawings that we received for review?
Not significantly. There have been some changes that are relatively minor based on discoveries when we open things up or find slight differences in the manner of the original construction. The object being we're trying to keep every single piece that we possibly can so that as an interpretive museum, everyone can see what the original construction was, especially being that it's a very early construction with some purlins and that sort of thing. I inherited the project from Richard Ventrone. I'm a licensed architect in Connecticut myself. I started on this project in 2016. So I've got a long record of serving Gil Bliss, who is the president. I think he's also on the call. And we've had great progress, both, as you know, in the basement, through up structurally to the building, and now the floor is restored, and now we are making sure that the roof is adequate, as there was some damage in 1938 during the hurricane of 38. So we're making sure that the roof will be structurally capable to withstand any storms, as it's high and prominent on the landscape.
I have one additional question. I didn't see any information about the reconstruction of the chimney, but there was the discussion that it was originally stone and then at one point in time changed to brick as it came through the roof. What's the plan for restoring the chimney? To which period and which materials?
The stone is terminates inside the home, the first floor. As you can see, the cheeks on the fireplaces and that sort of thing. As it progressed up through the attic, it's been brick for quite some time. The period that we're looking to restore the building to is best reflected in the Habs drawings from the 1930s. And so rather than speculating conjecture, we're trying to stay with what was extant at that period. So we're closely following the chimney detailing using the original brick, as we have really good photographs from that period, from the Habs photographs and documentation.
Thank you. Sarah Nelson.
Thank you, Paul. I've got a few questions that are all tied together. And so since the design team has changed, I wanted to ask the architect, was the budget prepared on the submitted set of drawings and the details included, or was it based on another approach?
Yes, it was based on all that documentation. The president of Stanton Davis is here on the call as well, Gil Davis. If you, Gil Bliss, if you would like to ask him specifically that question.
So what I was noticing was that there's a very intensive use of steel in the detailing, which is escalating in cost. So I was just concerned that the proposed construction budget may not be big enough to cover the work that's been detailed. That was one question. I also wanted to ask, did a licensed professional structural engineer review the details?
We originally had a person that's actually recused himself from the meeting. Elizabeth was originally consulted for that purpose. As you know, architects also do calculations and do structural engineering incidental to the architecture. In this case, myself being experienced in that as well, any modest changes or anything like that, we've done in keeping with those standards.
Having done enough conditions assessments myself, I know that sometimes you talk about what a potential design solution is, and the words are interpreted by others in details. So I'm thinking that maybe that the engineer involved, it gave you an assessment, but without providing the details. Is that correct?
I'm not sure how to exactly to answer that. Usually reinforcement for this type of a structure, residential especially, would not have a structural engineer looking at every single piece of it, but sometimes we do have consultations, and then the experience width and breadth of the architect doing the work or overseeing the work then takes over at that point and instructs for execution of the plans.
So I'm going to suggest that these drawings be reviewed by a professional structural engineer. I see some things that are a little bit problematic in terms of connecting the steel structure supporting member to what looks like a single wide brick chimney. You also have some code issues. So I feel like an additional review would be in the owner's best interest and the design team's best interest too, obviously, because you're all working together.
For instance, the rafter that you mentioned on that's coming up against the chimney, that occurs for a shortened rafter that comes up against the chimney, and there is a full width of brick within the actual chimney itself. So it's not just the flat wall of the chimney, single wide. It's coming up into one of the flues that are at the interior of the structure.
Understand. I still rest by my comment. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Leah.
Yeah, can you hear me? I'm having some connection issues. Can you
Yes,
hear me?
we can. Yep.
Okay. This does not have to do with the actual work. It's just thinking about the purpose of this the purpose of this work to make this building something that can be more widely interpreted. So there's no doubt that this site has has value and an incredible story to tell, particularly about intercultural relationships, considering his role as an interpreter. But I just, if the interpretation is going to be broadened, I just encourage the group to include Native perspectives and interpretations. I'm not doubting that that's out there. It's just that the National Register nomination from which from stuff was lifted is really old and really based exclusively on colonial sources. And so I think in this day and age, it would be really enrich the role of this resource to include Native perspectives and interpretations of that time period and relationship with Stanton.
Thank you, Leah. V, did you have any other questions?
I had a question along with Sarah. I noticed that the budget was put together some time ago, and also I was concerned about the structural. I think it's worth it to at least have someone take a look at the plans one more time. You're definitely going to discover some maybe rots after, especially I think you are removing the existing attic floors as well. So there's little details in the plan that made me share Sarah's concern. So I think you might want to just have someone, a third party structural look at that. That's just a comment.
Thank you.
Can I respond to that comment, sir?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. What I found is that many times, especially with colonial and that period type of construction, engineers are all too eager to replace members and supplant them with things that are totally inappropriate. Historic preservation architects usually eschew that and follow the Department of Interior standards more closely. So I would certainly want to have my comments reflect that. Many times in some of my larger projects, the engineer may calculate the capacity of a beam or a piece of steel, but in many cases, the aggregate is left to, and most appropriate left to, the historic preservation architect to interpret and provide solutions. All too often, historic structures are damaged by overzealous engineering. So with respect to all my engineer friends that I use. The other issues on the budget and reviewing that, the steel is nearly complete. I would say we're 95%. So any budgetary reconsiderations would come completely after the fact. Structural steel and all that we did from the basement throughout the building up into the attic floor and the rafters themselves. All of that is, as I say, nearly completed, probably 95% at this point. So the budgets have been considered as we have gone along. And if you need to know more about that, we can certainly provide that.
Gil Bliss, I think you wanted to jump in after a previous comment, or Leah's comment.
Yes, a couple of comments. And to amplify what Robert was just saying as far as our budget, we're coming to SHPO for some help on a budget shortfall, basically because of the escalating costs of both labor and materials for our wood roof. We've raised over $200,000 toward this project, and the steel work, as Robert was just saying, is at this point 95% or so complete. We haven't really had much in the way of hiccups. So that's really where and how we were coming to you. When you speak about interpretation, which was an earlier comment, and making sure that the native component was would be part of the interpretation of the house. We're at a unique place where we're at a junction of not only the European settlement of the area with the Native Americans, but also to bring forward the slave component of what was going on in southeastern Connecticut, and particularly on the farm that we represent, that both the Stantons and the Davises had slave labor to make the farm work. So that's all part of the overall package of interpretation that would be part of the museum.
I guess the comment was, yes, coverage, which I'm glad to hear, but also just bringing in perspectives of Pequot's to help with the interpretation when you're drafting a plan.
Well, not only the Pequots, but more importantly, the Mohegans, which have a much more robust earlier relationship with the Stantons.
Great.
Going back to the roof and the roof work and structure and issues, problems, I gotchas. I come to the museum not from an academic perspective, but I've been involved with historic restoration on homes for the better part of my career, and worked for maritime museums as well in wooden structures my entire life. That's one of the reasons why I am overseeing and project managing this, and working with Steve Tyson of Architectural Preservation Group, who he and his crew are doing the work, and with Robert Leach. I think we've put together a pretty good team, and so far all is going pretty well.
Marguerite?
Yes, I just had a question about the context of this roof project in the larger building envelope. The photographs show that the siding has been removed and insulation has been added. And so I'm just trying to get a sense of the sequence of it and what happened to the siding, why it was removed, and so forth, if somebody could just clarify that.
There are a couple of things that have gone on, but firstly, there's no insulation involved with the structure. What you're seeing is a Typar Tyvek wrap.
Oh, thank you.
Which is a wind barrier, which is the only thing keeping the wind whistling through some of those walls right now, which are vertically boarded. A lot of the siding was removed to be able to create access for repairs for posts, sills, boarding, that were all in poor condition. And we've been working on this structure from the foundation up through and now into the attic and the roof system. So our hopes are to get a solid, sound roof structure and roofing over our heads, so that now we can start thinking about the exterior envelope being the walls and windows.
Thank you.
Beth Burgess?
Thanks, Paul. I had questions about the long-range preservation plan. I noticed that it appears the structure is yet to have any systems in it, so no HVAC, no emergency systems, no fire suppression. But I'm assuming once you have the envelope secured and stable, you will move into the interior. Just a note, certainly as you go through and make these changes, these repairs, and more outside contractors are in and out, I would urge you to at least have some sort of smoke detectors added, something.
Absolutely, couldn't agree with you more.
Thank
we're
you.
in the process right now of getting permanent power back up to a remote point outside the building.
Mm-hmm.
It's taken us close to 4 years between easement from Eversource and planning. Sarah Sportman, Dr. Sportman has been out on site, allowing us to bring in underground service. So there have been a number of wheels and things going on. So once that would be another component in the trenches, not just power, but data, which would allow for that sort of work to happen.
Right, exactly. So important to, continuing the preservation work is to mediate that risk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I make a comment, please, for that? It's Robert Leach.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I was going to say one of the things that we eschew on all our historic sites is any open field welding of any kind. Those are just not allowed on our sites. Also, anything that's a grinding that may create sparks, that sort of thing. And of course, every historic site that I work on, strictly enforced, it's a no smoking area. So thank you for mentioning that. I have another job right now where we installed a full working alarm system before we even supplied the work, with an announcement to police and fire. So I share your concerns. Anyone that watched the news for the Cathedral of Notre Dame was also amazed that buildings like this and others are not adequately protected.
Thank you very much.
Sarah Nelson?
Thank you, Paul. In light of the discussion, it's a worthy project, but I am actually going to propose a motion to amend the motion to ask for a review of a historic structural engineer. To Mr. Leach's comment, oh, yes, I agree. Structural engineers are not all the same. To review the drawings and to be available during contract administration. So by making a motion, Paul, somebody would have to second it if they also believed it, and if they didn't, then the motion wouldn't go forward.
Okay, there's one point of clarification I'd like to ask Aaron. Typically, if there's a scope of work being proposed that's already underway, if 95% of that work is there, coming in after the fact, it's not a previously approved grant for an increase because of escalation. It's new. There's a discrepancy between the wording of the motion and what's included on page 38 of the application, which is just talking about the roofing and the chimney work. The roofing and chimney work on page 38 comes to about $157,000. So this appears to be, half of that work. So are we approving funding for half of the actual roof and chimney work, or with the structural work? So to Sarah's point, is the structural repair actually part of what we're funding under this allocation?
So they needed extra funding for the cedar shake roofing on the house and the cheese room, as well as the chimney stack. Since the structural support has been added on their own account, that wasn't entirely part of this, but the part that is remaining is included in this grant, which is, so the remainder of the structural report support is included in this grant, but largely it's the cedar shake roofing. Did that make sense? So what they have already done is they've already covered the cost of, and we are covering the remainder of the structural work and the roof.
May I
Sarah,
make
do you
a-
want?
This is Gil Bliss. May I make a comment?
Yes, please.
To amplify what Aaron was just saying, the structural work, we presented plans so you'd all know what was going on with our work. We have covered it. We are covering it. We're seeing a shortfall in our own funding to be able to bring the full roof work to completion because of the escalating costs of those materials. And we were not seeing any of that really going toward structural work. Of the $78,000, 70 in round terms was going toward the main house roofing shortfall, and $7,000 or $8,000 was going toward roofing shortfall for the cheese room. So that's kind of the breakdown there, if that makes any more sense.
Tom, did you have your hand up previously?
I did, but I figured I didn't know how to ask my question, so I.
So go back to Sarah.
So I think this is a little bit murky in terms of, I mean, I understand, you know, what you're saying, that the money is being used to cover the shortfall in the materials. But the motion includes the entire roof structural support system. So it was a little confusing as to what this grant funding was actually applying to. So if I go back to Mr. Bliss's comment, am I correct then in understanding, Mr. Bliss, that this grant funding is just for the difference in the cost in the cedar roof shingles? Or if it does include some structural work, what is the structure that's included in this?
At this point right now, this is Gil Bliss speaking, there won't be any structural work involved with the monies that we're coming to you for. We're going to have a small amount of roof boarding, which will have to be replaced. The bulk of that has to do with damaged boards from the 1938 hurricane. We need to retrim the perimeter of the roof so the roof work can be done. We have donations in hand for doing the millwork to make the new wood what it ought to be to match. We also have a generous donation lowering the costs of trim wood. And we've been working with several suppliers to try to bring down our costs of roofing materials, both for the cheese room and the main house. But 5/8 taper sawn red cedar shingles are not as expensive as they were last year, but still a fair bit more expensive than when we had originally budgeted this project. So if that fleshes out a little bit more what you were at.
So Paul, what I'd like to do is withdraw the motion that I made, but I would like to make another motion, which is to alter the project description within the motion. So the project would be
Start at the word restoration of the center chimney.
Installation of the red cedar shake roofing on the main house and cheese room and associated trim boards.
The breakdown of the project cost for the 157 did include the center chimney rebuild. So we could probably keep that, and then we get the 50% match of the total number. Just restoration of the center chimney stack and installation of red cedar shake roofing on the main house and cheese room. I think that would keep the grant amount consistent with the scope of work that was outlined in the application, and just get rid of the problematic language about the structural support work. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay, so that's my motion. All that.
This is Tom, and I'll second that motion because I was going to recommend the same restructuring of the original motion.
Okay, so we have a motion to revise the project description to read restoration of the center chimney stack and installation of red cedar shake roofing on the main house and cheese room. So we have to have our vote. Beth Ackley is not here, right? Vincenzia?
Aye.
Beth Burgess?
Aye.
I will abstain. Marguerite?
Aye.
Tom Elmore?
Aye.
Leah Glazer?
Aye.
Andy Horowitz?
Aye.
Sarah Nelson?
Aye.
And Sarah Sportman.
Aye.
The motion passes to revise the project description. Now the roll call on the full approval. I'll read the full motion. Historic Preservation Council votes to award a Historic Restoration Fund grant funded by the Community Investment Act of the State of Connecticut to the below listed applicant in the amount shown. All grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of a grant as administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Staff recommends the application for funding. Applicant, Stanton Davis Homestead Museum, Inc., 576 Greenhaven Road, Pawcatuck, Connecticut. Project, the restoration of the center chimney stack and installation of red cedar shake roofing on the main house and cheese room. Amount $78,658. Roll call vote. Vincenzia?
Aye.
Beth Burgess?
Aye.
I will abstain. Marguerite Carnell?
Aye.
Tom Elmore?
Aye.
Leah Glazer?
Aye.
Andy Horowitz?
Aye.
Sarah Nelson?
Aye.
And Sarah Sportman.
Aye.
8 yeas, 1 abstention, and 1 recusal. The motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much for having an easy entry into my position.
But
Paul,
you
you're
did
doing-
great.
You're doing great, Paul. You're doing
The
great.
next item, 5B5, Historic Restoration Fund grant for the North Congregational Church, 11 Main Street, North Woodbury. Funding increase to an existing grant. Could I have a motion to bring for discussion?
Marguerite, so moved. Oh, sorry.
No, go right ahead. I'll second that.
Marguerite moved and Beth Burgess second. All right, discussion.
So the church recently completed a metal roof replacement using an HRF grant. The HRF grant was prepped for using a survey and planning grant from our office, which produced drawings for a new ADA bathroom, which the organization was not sure they could afford to implement until the roofing project finished under budget, and extra fundraising made it possible. Having an ADA bathroom is hugely important and vital to church members and members of the public, and Steve Lewis is on the call as well to help with questions.
Aaron, I have one question. In reviewing the project costs, just want to make sure that there are line items that in the total showing, you know, where it's over budget and all of that. Historic architect drawings and project oversight amounts and architectural drawings. Are those amounts eligible for funding under the project calculation? Because, you know, there are two separate questions here. One is whether or not previously approved funding can be reallocated, followed up by a second issue of increasing to cover the additional costs. So
Okay.
I just want to make sure that what's shown on their matrix is all eligible costs, because normally we have planning and survey grants for drawing specifications, but just construction administration is allowed during the later funding round.
Right. So we do allow, like you said, construction management costs to be added into the budget. Steve, how much more do you have for drawings? Is it really just managing the bid process that's included?
No, actually, this was, thanks. This is Steve Lewis. Thanks. And I want to thank both Aaron and Mary who helped me through this knothole on this one. When we first did our pre-development work, it was a three-pronged approach. Because our church has been built starting in 1816 and add on in 1965, an add-on in 54 and then an add-on in 65. It's multi-levels. We had no access to any bathroom facilities. We had no access to any floors, and simultaneously our 144-year-old roof was about ready to go. So in our pre-development program, we actually grouped those three together. Hugh Sullivan was the historic architect that helped us, and as Aaron alluded, we're like most churches struggling to pass that collection plate, and so we needed the most urgent first, which was obviously the roof. That being completed by a great team. Hugh Sullivan had actually done the ADA bathroom drawings, never submitted the invoice to us. So when we submitted our pre-development invoice, because we thought we were at the end of the program, that $5,000 wasn't in there. When we said, Hugh, great news, we have the money, we're under budget, we can go ahead with the ADA bathroom, he dropped that on my desk. So that was a surprise to me, and I didn't know how to handle it. You know, if you can't fund it, that's fine. If you're willing to access it, we will certainly be grateful for that. So that's really where that came in. They were all done. You know, when I picked my jaw up off the conference table, Hugh said, "Oh, I thought these were separate projects." He didn't understand the process of that, and I guess I wasn't smart enough to ask him if we had all the invoices in hand. So that's where we are. We are about, rough numbers, $22,000 short on the project. We do have funds where we could tap our trust and investments in order to complete the ADA bathroom. But at the suggestion of both Mary and Aaron, she suggested that we submit this, since it was all one project in the beginning, and see if we couldn't get that half matching grant on this part of the project. Oh, and I'm going to go, while you're conjugating that, before I forget, it was either Sarah or Beth 2 years ago when we were doing our roofing project, asked when we tore off the metal roof to look underneath and see if there were wooden shakes underneath still. There were. So anyway, thank you for that. I don't know if that confused or helped, but.
So Mary and I are talking, trying to figure out how we can do this. Hold on one second.
Oh, I got it.
Go ahead.
Okay, I think I'm echoing. So I think I was under the impression,
You turn your volume on.
hold on. Okay, okay. So I thought that the ADA drawings were under the previous survey and planning grant. So I think to
Me
answer
too.
Paul's question, that would probably not be eligible under the HRF. However, we could, well, they're already done. It's definitely fine to be approving this additional work because it was part of the additional scope. So that's fine. That's why Aaron and I suggested that he apply for the increase. However, unfortunately, the actual plans and specs for the ADA compliant bathroom, if they didn't fall under the last grant, they aren't really eligible costs under HRF. They're really pre-development.
I think I thought they were bid managed.
Yeah, unless, yeah. Yeah. And I don't think that there's, well, the other grant has been closed out. And unfortunately, they've already been done, so I don't think you could apply for another survey and planning. But the work itself is eligible to go before the council, the increase for that portion. Sorry, yeah, but I think that's the answer.
It's, yeah, I understand. So thank you. So now I go back to Hugh Sullivan and put a tear in my eye for the next project, I guess.
Sorry, Nelson, you have your hand raised.
I do, Paul. And, I appreciate Mary and Aaron and, everyone is trying to be flexible and adaptable within the context of the public funding here. And that this is a really worthy ad. I think what I am struggling with is just, I'll call it the format, if you will. So we love multiple phase projects where somebody completes a project and they roll right into the next one. I went to the original motion back in July. So the motion in 2021 was for roof. And then there was a motion in April of 22 to increase the award. And again, it was for roof. And so this worthy project, I almost feel structurally, Mary and Aaron, needs to be a separate project. I don't know what your discussions you had about that, because we bifurcate things with other applicants.
Mm-hmm.
Help me think this through.
Yeah, no, that's a good, hold on. We have to trade off on our volume. No, that's a good point. I think we were, and I did not go back to that original motion, so that's probably why. But because everything was folded into the original application, we saw that work as already eligible. But I do see what you're saying, and that's not to say that they couldn't come back with a new HRF application for just the ADA compliant bathroom rather than an increase to the current grant. Yeah.
We would just pay them less.
Just minus the plans and specs.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the outcome's basically the same. Well, except for that you have to come back with a new application.
Right, the dollar amount won't change.
Yeah.
Can you clarify? There are two lines that say construction for under the ADA bathroom. Each 22. Yeah. Is it the sum of those two? So it's a $44,000 project.
Right. Yeah. One is the down payment and one is the completion upon final.
So if you did come back for a new grant, it would be in the amount of $22,000 to be half of the eligible cost if the total project was $44,000.
Yes, correct.
Does that make sense, Mary?
Can you repeat that? Sorry, we were having volume.
The The ADA bathroom construction has two line items. One was the deposit and then the balance. So it's a 44,600 and something project.
Yes.
So they would be able to come in with a new grant application for 22,334.
Yes, that would be allowable. Yeah.
That works, that works.
Plus the
Sure.
cost of the architect for construction administration.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, we can add that in there this
Yeah, not
round?
the
We're good?
actual,
Not the first
not the
5,000 for
plans
the
and
plans,
specs, but bidding out
The
or
oversight.
the oversight. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
So if I
Yeah,
may
I'm
jump
fine,
in,
I'm fine with that.
Paul,
It actually
sorry.
winds up being a little bit more, so. But
if I may
Tom?
jump in, it sounds like in the long run, Steve, if you run the numbers, it's more prudent on your end to stop today's application and submit a new HRF application based on this conversation. It'll actually save you money in the long run, even though
ooh,
you're financially eating the design fee, but that
Right.
$5,000 significantly offsets the additional 10 plus that you're getting in the new HRF.
it's music to my ears, Tom. Thank you.
So
We'll do that
procedurally,
then. So I guess formally we'll withdraw this current request, the
Well,
State
Steve,
Historic
Steve,
Preservation.
let me-
Thank you. I had a hard time
Steve,
with
let me
that
cut you
one.
off before you
We'll
do that.
withdraw this request and then
No, no.
I'll work with Mary and Aaron to resubmit as quickly as we can.
Not
Does
yet.
that work?
Not yet.
Steve,
not yet.
Oh,
before you,
all right.
before you do
I'm
that,
not, I take that back. I take back
Yeah.
my request to take it back. So
let the council talk it through so we can figure it out, so it meets all the criteria that we have to, address.
got it. I'll put myself on mute so I won't jump in.
Okay, so for my parliamentarian advice columns, what is our recommended course of action here? Do we table this until the next meeting so they can resubmit?
Or
Or,
let Mary and Aaron talk for a minute so that they can figure things out from their end and come back to advise us.
Oh, okay. So off the record or now? Right. Yeah, I mean, to Sarah's point, if this, they do have to come in with a new application because the one on the table now is an increase to a motion that never was, that it's always been roof. And so this new project never has been a thing. So unfortunately,
Close it out.
yeah, yeah, that's true. They could close their current one and get paid under this, sure. The roof, and then submit a new application for the ADA.
okay, so Sarah.
So,
What's our
Mary-
next step?
Yeah, Mary and Aaron, just a quick question for you. Understanding, of course, time is always of the essence, and there's a timeline to close out, and there's a timeline to grant applications. Could the congregational church submit the closeout documentation to you, and with one hand, and in the next hand, give you the application? Okay, so we don't have time that needs to be accounted for to kind of process all the paperwork once. Okay, so that's great. And Paul, to your question, from the standpoint of how should we treat, so we have a motion on the floor that's been moved and it's been seconded. Based on this discussion, it sounds like the best thing would be to actually vote on this motion, and it may be to vote on it to deny it without prejudice. So that would be people voting against this motion without prejudice, and that would take this motion off the table. And then next month, we'll have a new motion that's very clean and different, which is for the ADA bathroom. That would be, my suggestion I would forward to you.
But Sarah, without prejudice, doesn't that imply that it's still within the same scope? I mean, it will be a completely new application.
It will be a completely new application. That's right. So
Do we just need to say nay on this one?
Nay. Sure.
And then it just terminates this, and then they come in with a totally new application, and it's very clean and not a continuation. Tom?
Yep.
Yeah, just building on the thought processes here. Steve, we're working hard to get you what you need, just so you know.
Thank you.
And
Yes, I hear that. I appreciate that.
What I'm thinking, and Sarah and Paul, you have more experience with Mary and Aaron with regard to closing out grant applications and the time frame. But Steve, I would think if you started this afternoon on your new HRF grant, because it's going to take a little time to put it together, then
right.
The balls can keep rolling. I don't think, at least in my standpoint, I don't think you need to wait until you have the closeout before you start typing on your computer the new application. The kicker is you can't submit the new one until the other one's closed out. And that's what Sarah was referring.
All right. Oh, I see. All right. Well,
till the other one
yeah,
is to submit it, Tom. It doesn't have to be
submitted.
fully closed out. Just
Okay.
needs to be submitted.
There you go.
And
But
by
Steve,
the
I just
form
don't
what
want you to
mean
lose.
for the roofing project, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Steve, I just don't want you to
All right,
lose
we have
2
all
weeks.
we have all the paperwork on that, so we're all set. Okay.
Steve, I just don't want you to lose 2 weeks because you thought one thing and in reality, I think the two things can go hand in hand. You just can't submit the paperwork. You got to submit those in sequence, one before
right.
the other.
Now, a quick question on the grant. Is the same format with all the tabs and all of the requirements that we had last time? Can I just duplicate that, meaning use of the building and our historic our historic building grant and all of that? That can just be duplicated. It's really the costs and the scope of the project.
Exactly.
Great.
Yep.
Yeah, and the description is
great.
now focused on the bathroom.
On the ADA bathroom. Perfect. Yeah. Okay. All right. I have the will and I have the technology, and I'll go do it.
Okay. So I guess we are going to have a roll call vote on. Do I need to read the entire motion, Sarah?
If you haven't read it, right?
Right.
So you do need to read it for the record.
The Historic Preservation Council votes to award a Historic Restoration Fund grant funded by the Community Investment Act of the State of Connecticut to the below listed applicant in the amount shown. All grant guidelines and state requirements shall be met by the below listed applicant upon receipt of a grant that is administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development. Staff recommends the application for funding. Applicant North Congregational Church, 11 Main Street North, P.O. Box 473, Woodbury, Connecticut. Project an increase to an existing grant for the creation of an ADA bathroom in the amount of $10,660. Roll call vote, Beth Ackley.
Oh boy, I'm the A. Nay.
V.
Okay.
That was an A. Beth Burgess.
Nay.
I will abstain. Marguerite Cornell.
Nay.
Tom Elmore.
Nay.
Leah Glazer.
Nay.
Andy Horowitz.
Nay.
Sarah Nelson.
Nay.
And Sarah Sportman.
Nay.
9 nays, 1 abstention. The motion is not approved. We look forward to seeing you back next.
Yeah, thank you. I do have to say that that's the first time that I've been denied something like that with good news on the projected forefront. So thank you. Appreciate all your time on this.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Bye now.
Tom, is your hand still raised for a particular reason? No. Okay. Next item on the agenda, item 6B, State Register of Historic Places nomination 6B1, State Register nomination for the Gilbert Farley House at 651 Nod Hill Road in Wilton. Motion to bring this to the table?
Tom, I make a motion to bring it to the table.
A second?
Sarah Nelson, second.
Okay, is this Jenny or who's
Nope, it's Marina. How you doing?
Marina? Okay, Marina, thank you.
Good morning. Still morning. Staff recommends approval of listing of the Gilbert Farley House located at 651 Nod Hill Road, Wilton, to the State Register of Historic Places under Criterion 2 at the local level in the areas of architecture and landscape architecture as the work of the team Nelson and Vera Breed in the Colonial Revival style and the Jekyll Dean style gardens, culminating in a unified vision of building and landscape architecture. The property is also significant under Criterion 1 at the local level in the area of social history for its association with the vibrant arts community in Wilton and its association with Weir Farm. Although the Gilbert Farley House was built in 1825, the context of significance for social history spans about a 40-year period between 1938 through 1976, and the architecture and landscapes design circa 1950. The site maintains a high degree of integrity with the house, garden, and outbuilding retaining the majority of their design, materials, locations, setting, workmanship, feeling, and association of a mid-20th century colonial revival country home and planned landscapes. Changes include alterations to the western L and changes to the entry doors of the outbuilding garage. The owner, who happens to be the author of the nomination, has undertaken significant replanting according to the original design of the sunken garden, including planting over 10,000 specimens this season. He is not here today, but I will do my best to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Marina. Just one comment. It's nice to see another landscape being included with a house and its importance to the whole. Well, that I'll open to questions. I see Marguerite has her hand up.
I do. My opening question is regarding the level of significance. I believe, Marina, that you said that it's significant at the local level. And as I look at the nomination, it looks like they're calling it out for the state level. So I just want to clarify that.
It is just local. Thank you.
Okay.
So thank you very much. Do you know what page that's on? I'll update that.
That's under the statement of significance. It's page 3 of the PDF.
Thank you.
Leah Glazer.
So, I mean, because it is just local, I guess maybe this is not so important, but in terms of the value, the historical social history significance piece, I was thinking that it would be nice to have it linked to a broader context than it is, that it just wasn't an art community that the nearby silver mine, community might be brought in there and
in Norwalk to see if there could be a little connection between those. Yes, I was thinking that.
Right.
The homeowner had done, if you guys can see, he has done such intense archival research.
Yeah.
Those very impressive on the house itself. But as far as the research being able to connect those two arts communities, I'm not sure if that's definite. But I actually happen to be reaching out to someone from the site manager at Weir Farm later this week. So if you guys would like to just check and see, if you'd like me to check and see if that's possible, I'll reach out and see what those connections are. If there isn't one, that's fine. We could just add a line. If there is, we could add some sort of contextual paragraph.
There's also a silver mine district nomination somewhere out there.
Yes, there is.
So that could be pulled, and then just mention that this was a thing. These kind of art village, nationally and especially in these kinds of areas. So just to put that in that broader, richer historical context. Thank you, Marina.
Thank you,
Tom.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. I agree with you, Paul. I was very pleased to see the landscape here. Marina, I found this very difficult to read. I found it very jumping from topic to topic. I couldn't understand why Weir Farm was playing such a significant role in the write-up and the description. I understand what you're saying about the relationships and things of that nature. But if this is for the nomination for the Gilbert Farley House, I'd like to downplay the significance of the Weir Farm and focus on this and rewrite this so it presents it in a more cohesive manner.
Mhm.
And maybe I'm just the only one that felt that, but I just struggled with every time I got into it, all of a sudden Weir Farm was back in front of me. I mean, the
Mhm.
photographs from Weir Farm just dominate this whole application, and I don't think it should be that way.
Sure. Yeah. And I will say that there is a lot of material here. You know, the homeowner is very enthusiastic and there is a connection to Weir Farm. But I think that I could work with the homeowner to streamline, edit out some of that, and then really emphasize with some more additional photos of the house. And perhaps what would be helpful is if we do a figure map where you can see that Weir Farm is located directly to the north of the property. And so we can kind of tie that in with some figures so that you understand that there's a sharing context here, but really edit some of that down.
That would be great. And I just had another fleeting thought.
Sure.
So I apologize. Going back to the original start of our conversation, this being a local nomination, not a state nomination. Paul, can you please look at your the nomination page and see if it says state or local? And if it does say state, we need to back up a step or two. And
Well,
and
it's a
re-
nomination for the Gilbert Farley House to the State Register of Historic Places. So it
but
is the
this is
state
a local.
register.
But I thought we had just talked about this
So,
being a local.
It's
sorry,
a local
it's
significance.
yes,
rather,
local significance.
but it's
Oh,
not a
gotcha.
local.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yes, but I will change that significance from state to local. Thank you.
Great. That was it for me. Thank you.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Tom. It was a little bit bouncing back and forth, and it would be nice to say this is the house and garden, its significance, and then relate it to the broader context
Right.
as the step two. You know, so it stands on its own within a broader trend, and then if there is additional linkages to the broader movement, as was stated, that these art communities were a thing, then that would be tier 3.
Sure.
Yeah, I was just concerned that he was feeling that he wasn't as significant as he might be, and therefore was relying on Weir Farm to get it across the board.
Yeah, and especially because, you know, he had done so, you know, he had so much material on the house that the house and site, they really do speak for themselves. They really are a wonderful site. So yeah, so that making those edits to downplay Weir Farm and just kind of, you know, put it in a secondary step, I think that would be fine. I think he would be okay with that.
Sounds great.
Great.
Thank you.
Marguerite, you have additional comments?
I do agree with Tom's comments and yours, Paul, that could use a little bit of reorganization. There's a lot of great information here, but it's not an entirely coherent narrative just yet. It seemed to me that it's a little stronger in terms of the amount of detail and discussion and analysis of the landscape than of the house and its significance during the colonial revival period. And if it's possible, just to put in, you know, perhaps a paragraph or so about the colonial revival and putting it into context that rehabilitating these houses during this period was also a thing.
Yeah.
And just adding a little context about that might be helpful.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, especially when we're tying it in with the artist community, is that these kind of idyllic, picturesque landscapes, and then this romanticism of these colonial periods during this mid-20th century of all these innovative thinkers and artists and these kind of avant-garde groups. I think that was a great first paragraph to kind of introduce you to the significance of the house and the property.
Right. Any further comments or questions? If none,
Paul, I have one.
Yes.
Sorry. So to me, this is a major rewrite. Do we need to have them rewrite it and resubmit it for us?
So that is your decision. Typically, if you think that the argument is being made for the criterion, you know, that it's eligible under those criterion and that the argument is made, typically, you know, in the past, the council has voted to approve it, and then rewrites, you know, we could submit it to you just for review and comment, if you'd like that. Usually there's a table if, you know, there's something where you think, you know, I don't think that it's significant under this criterion. or something like that. But again, that's the council's decision.
Yeah. No, I think it does meet all of that. In my mind, it just needs to be rewritten.
And I think what we can do is just for comment for you guys is to bring it back the next month. So you could, perhaps you could approve it with, and I don't know. I don't
Submit
know
final for
I don't know what
record.
yeah, exactly. I don't know what the rules would be, but just basically approval with that a final copy will be submitted to you guys.
Okay.
Thank
I can
you.
live with that.
It's fine.
Okay.
Okay. With every comment being satisfied, I'll go to the vote. Beth Ackley,
Aye.
Incenzia,
Aye.
Beth Burgess.
Aye.
I guess I will abstain. Margaret Carnell,
Aye.
Tom Elmore,
Aye.
Leah Glazer,
Aye.
Andy Horowitz,
Aye.
Christine, oh, right, sorry, Sarah Nelson,
Aye.
and Sarah Sportman.
Aye.
Motion carries. That's 9 yeas and 1 abstention.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we look forward to the edited version.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Okay, moving right along. 6B2, State Register of Historic Places nomination for the Brian D. Jones Paleo Indian Site at 800 Old Farms Road in Avon. As mentioned earlier, Sarah will be abstaining from voting, but she is remaining present in case there are any questions, since she's the state archaeologist. Can I have a motion to bring this forward?
It's Tom. I'll make a motion to bring it to the table for discussion.
And a second?
This is Sarah Nelson. I'll make a second.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Staff recommends approval of listing of the Brian D. Jones Paleo Indian Site located at 800 Old Farms Road, Avon, under Criterion 3 at the state level as the oldest dated Paleo Indian site in Connecticut and the oldest known human settlement in the state. The site is being named in honor of Dr. Brian Jones, who held the position of state archaeologist before Sarah Sportman, who was a member of this council and was a colleague and friend to us all. The site was identified through the Section 106 process, with Dr. Jones serving as a consulting archaeologist during the first phase of identification. His research and analysis suggested that there would be deeply buried deposits below what was being tested at the time, which came to be correct when deeper excavations were undertaken as part of the construction process. The Connecticut Department of Transportation worked with our office, Dr. Jones, who was serving as the state archaeologist at the time, and consulting archaeologists to facilitate the complete excavation of the site, resulting in the identification of the most important Paleo-Indian site in the region. Here today is Meg Harper, president of Public Archaeology Survey Team, who can help answer archaeology questions alongside Sarah and our archaeologists, Kathy Labadia and Corey Atkinson. Also present is Brendan Robertson, the town manager of the town of Avon. And also here today is Fiona Jones, Dr. Jones's daughter, who would like to read a statement from her family.
Hi, everyone. Okay.
Yeah, Fiona, if you want to speak, that'd be great.
Sounds good. As Marina said, my name is Fiona Jones. I am an archaeologist in Southern New England, but I'm here today to speak on behalf of my family because, as Marina said, I'm also Brian Jones's daughter. I also want to acknowledge that my mom and Brian's wife, Margaret O'Keefe, is also on the call today as well. I had the privilege of excavating at this site in 2019 alongside my dad, but I want to share a short statement written by our family. I think it's important that the goals of this site are recognized and that the responsibilities are fulfilled. My family and I are honored that this site was named after my dad. His career started in Paleo-Indian archaeology, for those that don't know, so it's really special to us that his legacy will remain there. However, it's important to understand that there are additional responsibilities that come with making this about his legacy. And it's the opinion of myself and my family that in making this about my dad, it's important that the appropriate steps are actually taken to honor his legacy.
I'm sure that those on the call today who knew my dad would agree with me when I say that it's difficult to quickly summarize my dad's kind spirit and good character. But in the context of this meeting, I think it's most important to emphasize or highlight his identity as an educator. My dad was an outstanding educator, and I think that's because of his love of learning. He found a joy in learning, and I think he wanted to share that with as many people as he could. So with that being said, it's the opinion of the Jones family that this site be given as much opportunity to be learned about as possible. Having excavated at the site, I know firsthand how much there is we can learn from it. This site changes what we know about the history of the region. I have no doubt that my dad would agree with me when I say that this site deserves to be talked about and published about and learned about by a much wider community and not just those of us that are here today on the call. My family and I believe that the first step in that is adding this site to the state register. We are hopeful that more steps will be subsequently taken in order to continue fulfilling the responsibility of honoring my dad, but we are prepared to continue advocating when we see fit. I just want to thank you all for this the dedication you have to the project and being here today to hear our thoughts. I did send a copy of the statement to Rena, so hopefully it will be available as part of the permanent record. But that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Questions?
This is Meg Harper from PAST. And I wanted to indicate that David Leslie, formerly of PAST, but who was the author of the nomination, is also present today.
Thank you. Tom? I think Tom froze again. Tom, I think you're frozen. Anyone else? Oh, Tom, you're back.
I'm back.
Okay.
I don't know what's going on. I have a question for all the archaeologists, and Fiona, thank you so much. You know, I only communicated with your father once or twice on a spear point that was found here in Suffield, and I never met him personally, but I hear wonderful things about him. So thank you. My question for all the archaeologists, though, is knowing that this site was found under X number of feet of material, how can that knowledge be extrapolated for investigating other sites across the state of Connecticut in similar situations or in totally different situations that may in fact be significant below grade, but we don't know that they're significant until several feet of material is removed. And I know there's dollars associated with that, but I'd like to take what was learned here to the bigger picture. And I know it's an open-ended question, but that's all I got.
Sure. This is David Leslie. For some reason, my camera isn't working, but can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Sure. I like that question a lot, and I'd love to answer some things from my perspective, having excavated the site and worked on a couple of other deeply buried sites in the region as well. So a little history, I think that we go over this a little bit in this nomination, but there is another deeply buried Paleo-Indian site, the Templeton site, which was found in the 1970s. Many archaeologists in the region considered that to be an anomaly, I think, until this site was discovered. They're on different rivers. They're both found in Connecticut, but the similarities sort of stop there. They're preserved due to different reasons. I think to your point, Tom, suggesting that there could be potentially many other deeply buried sites preserved across the region. For a long time, archaeologists thought that sites next to rivers could not have this deep of antiquity because glacial outwash between about 16 and 14,000 years ago likely obliterated, and up to 12,000 or 10,000 years ago, obliterated any evidence of occupation by people during this period. Not that they didn't spend time next to rivers, but the glacial outwash was so severe that it made it unlikely to find sites. That's clearly not true. And I think that I work as a consultant archaeologist. I know that at AHS, they do this as well. There's a lot of renewed interest because of this site, but because of other discoveries that are happening in other parts of the world too, or of the country, for looking at deeply buried alluvial sites. So I think that this is something that's on the mind of a lot of people in this industry these days, where what's happening is looking at the site setting, doing it on a case-by-case basis. Sometimes this comes from the SHPO reviewers, sometimes it comes from the consulting archaeologists, but trying to make sure that we don't miss these types of sites in the future by paying careful attention when we're excavating our shovel test pits. Do we get to the glacial sea soils, or do we see deeply buried fluvial or alluvial soils? And if we see those deeply buried alluvial soils, what does that mean? Does that mean that we need to do further investigations through potentially ground penetrating radar or deep coring analyses, as we've done at this site, as a way to assess the sensitivity, and then do potential in-construction excavation or some other method to ensure that we're looking for those types of sites? So I think that's just a general comment, but I do believe that within cultural resource management, people are paying attention to this, and I hope that we will find many more sites of this type, because it really was an unparalleled opportunity to learn about the past. And if there are others out there like this, then we will all benefit from their analyses.
Great, thank you, David.
Aaliyah.
Yeah, first I just want to thank Dr. Jones's family also, and I believe I did serve on the council with him, and I believe we might have been started on the council together, and we do miss him. On the note that I guess people were just talking about, that this could be the beginnings of other things, in the form under Section 8, it says that it was the first site of human settlement, and it might be that the case now, but I was just wondering, in case there's other things discovered, maybe that just language could be modulated a little bit, so we don't have to go back and correct that at a later point. That's all.
Sure. I think in the nomination narrative, we described that it is the earliest to date. So that I think leaves room for hopefully certainly earlier occupations to be discovered.
Yeah, I guess it's just the first statement at the top of page 13, just do the same thing, to just add that exact language.
Sure.
Any other comments or questions? I'll just ask one as the general question. For moving forward, are these investigations triggered by something that's visible at the surface level, or and so it was a known quantity to kind of continue your investigation, or is it during a construction process and you discover something, work stops, and then the deeper investigation begins? Just thinking down the road, it's sort of what's the normal process, if there's a statutory process or not, to know when archaeological resources may be on a site.
This is Meg Pulper. I think that's a really good question, and I also think that points out why compliance with Section 106 that mandates archaeological investigations before projects that are federal, permitter funding, and even have state permitter funding, why it's so important to do this well ahead of any kind of construction. So ideally, these kind of sites can be found well prior to construction, because you know where the impact will be by the construction project, and then you can target investigations, and you can think about things like, if you're in alluvial areas, you can apply what we learned from this Brian Jones site. But that just points out how important the National Historic Preservation Act is in sort of, affecting this kind of survey before projects. I think that one of the lessons of this site is that it was found, but and predicted, but it wasn't actually worked on until construction already started. And that's not really the ideal way things should proceed. Everybody was out there excavating while construction vehicles went running around in circles around us. So it's not ideal. So preferably we'd like to find these things earlier, but it definitely, points to awareness, as David discussed earlier, awareness on the part of your cultural resource consultants and your clients that you need some lead time, you need some runway to be figuring out what might be present and how best to discover it archaeologically, what best to do.
Thank you. Beth?
Yes, thanks. Just wanted to start and echo everybody. Fiona, thanks so much for coming and speaking on behalf of your family about your dad and this really special site. It really helps to have your context on it. And I guess just to follow up on that last question, if someone would just speak to how the construction of the DOT project might have been altered and how this site was preserved, just so that we understand, would be helpful.
Well, I would say that for what happens in cultural resource management is that ideally, if you find a site that's determined to be eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places, the first step is you try to avoid it completely. If you can't avoid it, you try to minimize impacts. And if you can't minimize impacts, you try to mitigate impacts. And in this case, because it's a bridge footing for a bridge replacement that could go nowhere other than this site, there was no option except for mitigating data recovery, meaning archaeological excavations of the entire site, which removed it. So in that way, that portion of the site under the footing is saved, not in the ground, but in all the data that comes out of it. And that's what makes it the most important in the first place. But in this case, as indicated in the nomination, this site keeps going outside of the CONDOT project area, and it goes north and south. And those are the parts that still remain and that the town wishes to save for the future. And so I think this is a win-win. We learned a lot about occupation in the period, but then there's at least as much site left over in preservation now.
Great. Thank you for elaborating on that a little bit. Very helpful.
You're welcome.
Tom, you have another question?
Yeah, I do. For Meg and for David. Meg, by the way, nice to hear your voice. Can you, Meg and David and whoever else was on the site, describe a little bit about your findings for us? I mean, we're all intrigued by this and we're excited about it. I'd just like to hear a little bit about what you found, if you're willing to share it, if you can share it without compromising the site. And I know that's a big lift.
So, Dave, I'll come to you.
Sure. So we found lots and lots of things. We found not only that the site was deeply buried, that it existed, which was again not something, I think, to your earlier point, Tom, that's one of the most important discoveries in a long list of important discoveries at the site. There were over 16,000 stone tool artifacts that were recovered from the site. These are in 3 separate layers of soils that were deposited by the Farmington River. We found in these excavations, because they were buried so deeply, we also found what archaeologists refer to as cultural features. These are remnants of past activities that are not portable, but are sort of in place from the site, like site furniture, site encampment features. These include open air hearths, posts, and post molds from likely camping or tent structures. These are also sort of an unparalleled discovery. We found 31 of these at the site. Prior to the discovery and excavation of this site, there had only been about 20 of these types of features that had ever been radiocarbon dated, 21 of these features that had ever been radiocarbon dated from the Northeast. We radiocarbon dated 20 of them, getting radiocarbon dates from the Paleo-Indian period for nearly all of them. We also have early archaic dates. Those are from about 9,500 to 8,000 years ago, suggesting that people occupied this landscape over a period of 4,500 years. And then they reoccupied it during the Middle Woodland period, which is about 1,500 years ago. And then they reoccupied it again as part of the Avon Old Farms sort of system that's there, the school that's there. Within those 16,000 artifacts, there are numerous types of diagnostic tools from Paleo-Indian lifeways, including the types of tools that they use to scrape animal hides, to hunt animals, to produce other tools on site. These are, again, diagnostic of Paleo-Indian occupations. We also employed a use-wear specialist who looks at, under really high microscopy, the edges of these stone tools. He found that many of them were used, as we just suggested, to scrape animal hides and prepare clothing or camping material. We also utilized something called blood protein residue analyses. This works similar to the way that a COVID antigen test that we're all familiar works with, where you immerse a stone tool into a type of bath, releasing the blood proteins that may be preserved on the stone tool. You then compare these with antigens of known animals to see if there's a positive reaction, just like you get a positive reaction with a COVID test, for any types of specific species or families of animals. In these analyses, we found that people on site were hunting caribou or other cervids, potentially some cats too. So think bobcats, mountain lions, potentially extinct types of cats as well, based on the age of the site. There were also mouse remnants, which we think is most likely beaver. They're in the same family. But the most exciting, I think, from the archaeological perspective, is that there were elephant protein remains on one very large scraper, suggesting that either a mammoth or a mastodon was killed somewhere, or at least butchered on site. There aren't really any mammoth remains that are preserved in the state of Connecticut, only mastodons. That has more to do with the type of forests that were here, the plants that mastodons ate versus mammoths, suggesting that it was probably a mastodon. We found a fragment of a necklace fragment that was perforated and drilled, and then our use-wear specialist suggested that it was hung from a piece of rope too, before it broke and was discarded on the site. We found numerous pieces of a red pigment known as ochre, which is often used for clothing, for painting or decorating clothing. It also has adhesive properties where people might have used it as sort of a glue for their compound tools as well. I've lost my train of thought, but there are, as you can imagine, numerous really important discoveries that were made through the excavation of this site that was all made possible by Brian predicting its location, working with SHPO, FHWA, and CONDOT, who paid for really excellent analyses for this material.
Thank you.
That was great, David. Thank you so much.
Any further questions? Brandon Robertson has his hand raised.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Brandon Robertson. I'm the town manager of Avon, and I just wanted to say this is a really exciting for us. Avon has a real affinity for its history. We've got a very active, strong historical society. We're just delighted that this is located in our community, and we will be a very good steward of this site. So really fascinating. I've learned a lot. We all have, about the science that goes into this, and it's really an honor to have it here. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Feel like the auctioneer, going once, going twice. All right, I'll read the motion. State Register nomination for the Brian D. Jones Paleo-Indian site at 800 Old Farms Road, Avon, to the State Register of Historic Places. Historic Preservation Council votes to list the Brian D. Jones Paleo-Indian site. located 800 Old Farms Road, Avon, to the State Register of Historic Places. Roll call. Bess Ackley,
Aye.
Incenzia,
Aye.
Beth Burgess.
A resounding aye.
I guess I will abstain. Marguerite Carnell. Is Marguerite
She's
still with
recused,
us?
Paul. She's
Oh,
recused
sorry.
from this.
Okay. Thank you. Tom Elmore,
Aye.
Leah Glazer,
Aye.
Andy Horowitz,
Aye.
Christine Nelson.
Sarah Nelson will
Oh, sorry,
answer
sorry, Sarah.
in an enthusiastic aye.
I'm using an old form. I haven't edited everything yet. And Sarah Sportman.
I
You have
abstain.
abstained, right? Thank you. The motion passes. That was 7 yeas and 2 abstentions and 1 recusal. Thank you very much. Okay, moving right along. I guess that brings us to item 9, the threatened properties for the SEPA update from Todd Levine.
Hi, Paul. This is Jonathan. I did hear from Todd. He does not have a report. There's no change on the status of any of the SEPA items for this month.
Okay. And then I guess you're next, Jonathan.
Yes, thank you very much. I just want to take a quick minute to thank you, Paul, for taking over the chair and doing an excellent job today. Thank you very much. And I also emailed separately this morning, but I did want to take 1 minute to thank Tom for his time and his service as the chair. We greatly appreciate all your effort, all your work, both in and out of the meetings. And I'm sure staff and your fellow council members feel the same. So thank you very much. I just have 2 quick things for everyone here. The first is just a quick discussion of our funding levels. As you know, Mary presented recently at a meeting regarding the CIA funding, and I just wanted to let everyone know that well, going back 1 step, you'll note in the report that Mary did, we did actually in 2022, the state fiscal year, grant out more than we took in quarterly deposits from the CIA. And this was because over the last several years, going back before I started with the office, SHPO had sort of built up a large surplus, essentially, of CIA funding. And that has been successfully spent down. And that is really a testament to the work of SHPO staff and council over the past few years and the work that you do. And this is a great thing to make sure that all this money is getting out the door. So we're entering a new period where we anticipate we're going to be a little bit more conservative with granting and funding, simply because we do not have that surplus in place anymore. We anticipate we will add a few HRF grants to the agenda in June. We may hold off on an agenda altogether in July. That has not been officially determined yet. We will let you know as soon as we can so that you can plan for that month. But we do suspect that we'll be going into this phase of just a little bit more conservative agendas. And as we move forward, we will be awarding grants as those funds become available and as those deposits come in. So I did just want to put that all on your radar. Hopefully the deposits that come in will continue to be great. But that surplus has been spent down. So any questions on that?
Jonathan?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to ask, understanding that, are you recommending changes to funding levels, or are you actually just changing the number of applications that will be put forward?
Yeah, we looked at that. I know we've the cap for the HRF has gone up and down in the past few years. We're not planning to change those at the moment. I think we're just going to be a little bit more selective. I mean, we've been very fortunate. As long as the project was a good project, we really haven't had to turn anyone away from funding recently, which has been wonderful. But like I said, I think we're just going to be a little bit more strategic in how the agendas are put together and which grants are being awarded. So we're still thinking through what that's going to look like, but we're not anticipating changing the caps at the moment, Sarah. Okay. And I'll obviously keep you guys apprised of that as we go forward. But the other thing I just wanted to put on your radar, and I've talked about this previously, is I just wanted to offer again, if council is interested, and please feel free to discuss it, you know, to amongst yourselves, or feel free to reach out to me with any questions. But I wanted to float the idea of it doesn't have to be every month, but a hybrid meeting format. If folks are interested in coming in and meeting in person. I know a few of you have expressed interest in that, and I'm absolutely willing to make that happen. Maybe we could do a quarterly in-person meeting. I was thinking that, you know, with the new state fiscal year starting in July, but we may not have a meeting, so maybe August. But let's continue to talk about that, because I really think it would be beneficial for everybody to meet in person a few times a year. And I'm happy to listen. You know, do you have any comments or questions on that? I'm happy to respond.
Beth, you have a question? Exactly.
Yeah. Yes, I do. Just a quick question on both of those things, Jonathan. The
Yes.
first one was just a clarification. Is the funding, the current funding as you're looking ahead, is that a sort of a cash flow thing as the deposits are coming in, or is that a big picture overall number thing?
That is a cash flow thing. As the funding is coming in, we receive quarterly deposits from the CAA specifically for the grants in July, September, December, January, and April. So depending on what those look like, the agendas for that few months will be set accordingly.
Okay, got it. That's great. And then we haven't necessarily opened up the floor for discussion on your second point, but I'm definitely in favor of, you know, a hybrid approach, and I know it's a bit of a travel for some, so maybe not necessarily every other, but quarterly or
That's
something.
what I was thinking. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think quarterly would be a good compromise. But again, why don't you guys think about that? I can follow up with an email to the group if you're, you know, I can kind of get a poll going if people are interested in doing that, maybe in August. Happy to set that up. I think that would be great.
I support in person on a quarterly basis. I think that would be great.
Okay, excellent.
Jonathan, I just saw a little notice saying that there were 5 minutes left in the meeting. Is that something that we're going to get cut off at the end?
No, I
or-
don't think we're going to get kicked out. It's just reminding me that it's almost 12 o'clock. Yeah.
Okay.
But on that note, I will wrap up my comments and pass it over to Liz. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Paul, do you want to officially call on me, or should I just start talking?
Yes, let's have Liz Shapiro give the report on the museum properties.
Thanks so much and welcome, Paul, in your new role. We're really happy to have you here. And Tom, we are happy to have you still in the room very much. I just wanted to give you guys a quick update, because I know we've spoken about the Good to Great grant program in the past. And we did bring this program back this year. We had not worked on it during the pandemic because it's a very labor-intensive program, and it also requires a lot of in-person visits. And so this year, we did bring it back, and we are partnering with Connecticut Humanities. Good to Great was designed, it's bond funding, and it's $5 million a year. It's been renewed for the past since 2016, I believe. And it is designed to help small to mid-sized organizations access large pools of money that they wouldn't normally have access to make their programs, their visitor services, their visitor experience go from good to great. And originally, these were conceived in a big consortium of independent folks working with legislators, but they were conceived to be sort of really small grants, $5,000 to $10,000 grants to small historical societies to pay for programmatic things. The way they were funded ultimately by the legislature was through bond funds, which makes implementing them in the way that they had been sort of idealized very, very difficult. So in the past, this program has been run by Todd very ably, but it is a very, very time-consuming program to run, not only through the application process, but we're working with small to mid-sized organizations who've never worked with bond funding, many of whom have never received a grant of this size before. And the grants were ranging from $50,000 up to
in some cases $500,000. And so it was a really difficult program to run. Because of the great work we've been doing in partnership with Connecticut Humanities, and because this grant actually serves our overlapping audiences really well, they were really interested in partnering. So we partnered with them to administer this grant and offer it in fiscal year 23. And I'm just really happy to note that things have been going along really well. We received over 130 grant applications, and we sent them through 2 stages of review. Some of you have been involved with review. So the first stage was 2 groups of reviewers, and they each reviewed over 60 applications. That cut the pool down to about 62 applications, which have been reviewed over the month of April by a team of 6 individuals. And that reviewer team is meeting tomorrow to go through the review process to discuss the scoring on all of those grants. There was scoring. We really approached this in a very collaborative way to try to make the program administration really fair, to make sure that there were really independent folks, but knowledgeable folks reading these grants, and to come to a really good and a good outcome so we could move forward with the program. And I think that we have really aced this part of it. I have had very little to do with it, except for being in countless meetings. So I can take none of the credit, but folks have been working really, really hard to make this transition. We have about $7.5 million to award this year because of funds left over from previous years, plus the $5 million that was approved in the bond by the Bond Commission. So we're really excited to be able to tell you more about this, and I'm not 100% sure we'll be able to share that list with you in June, because we hope to make the announcements around the same time, so we might not quite make it. But if we don't, we will share it with you in July and let you know how we'll give you an update on this program. But this is really a program where it takes a village to administer, and this is a really good partnership. So Connecticut Humanities, Office of the Arts, SHPO, tourism here at DECD, and I will just say a host of others. It feels like a Busby Berkeley production, for those of you who are old enough to know what that is. So I wanted to give you a little update on that. And then I wanted to just give you a quick update on the museums. I've been talking about the hiring for seasonals. It's been a beast, but we have made 12 offers. Right now, it looks like we will only be able to, at the most, have 11 folks, because we've already had 1 decline and we don't have any backups at this point. So I'll be very happy if we end up with either 10 or 11. And that gives us 2 returning seasonals at Old Newgate, which is our busiest site. It also gives us 1 seasonal definitely who has accepted for the Eric Sloan Museum, which really, really helps because Kent is a far trek for any staff to go to help cover. So that is all very exciting. And if any of you are interested in visiting any of the museums this summer and want to let us know ahead of time, just be in touch with me and I'll make sure somebody's there to welcome you. Just quick little updates, kind of like fun facts that are happening at each site. Old Newgate has a new ADA compliant, beautiful walkway to the visitors center and the prison yard. And that was paid for by the town of East Granby and organized and administered by the Friends of Old Newgate. And that includes some landscaping in front of the visitor center. The museum is opening next week. So that's Saturday, May 14th. And it's exciting because the museum is going to host on that day an official unveiling of the sculpture, The Metal Man, which is a new addition in the prison yard by artist Danny Killian. That's going to happen at 11 a.m. and there's going to be demonstrations, a bunch of different kinds of demonstrations, as well as a display of Prison Arts alumni artwork. Danny is a Prison Arts alumni himself. So we're really excited about that. And just in case anybody is really interested in what prison museums are talking about, which you might be, Morgan Bangle, who is our site administrator and curator at Old Newgate, is also the editor of The Forum, which is an informal newsletter for the members of the Prison Museum Consortium that she founded about 3 years ago. So if anyone wants to see that, it's kind of interesting to see what they're all talking about. I'm happy to forward that to you. At the Prudence Crandall Museum, we're opening for the season this weekend. This past week, we had Marina out on site and Andrew Rowan's coming in via Zoom to look at and discuss the exhibit of the charred beam, which we are going to uncover, which is one of the final remnants of the fire that was set to the building back when it was the Female Academy. The new signage will be hopefully in the museum by the end of June. So we're opening without that, but we're working on sort of events through the season. The most kind of fun thing that I think we have cut back, Prudence Crandall used to have a giant gift shop, which was really kind of a boring giant gift shop. A lot of books. Not that books are boring, but we have cut back on inventory there. But one of the things we did introduce, because it's very much related to the site, was align 2 different Prudence Crandall female seminary teas with mugs, and they were created for the museum by Inisips. If you've seen them, they are a Black woman and veteran-owned business, Connecticut business, and so we've been partnering with them on this project. So we're kind of excited about that. At the Eric Sloan Museum, they are opening this weekend, and this is the big power up at the Connecticut Antique Machinery Association. So if you or anyone you know loves antique machines of any kind and you want to see them all in action, this is the weekend to go to Kent, Saturday and Sunday, 10 to 4. And then on June 10th, if you're interested in seeing what the museum is doing to work with traditional trades people and crafts people, we're going to have the second Touch of Trade Day at the museum from 10 to 4 in conjunction with the Antique Tools and Trades in Connecticut group, which is, its acronym is ATTIC, ATTIC, which I just love. This is also sort of the nascent stages of a partnership to have some of these trades begin to be taught in the public high schools, tech high schools. And we've been very excited to partner with Paul Lavoie, who's on the board. He is the manufacturing guy in DECD. He's on the board of the Connecticut Tech Schools. And everybody is really excited about this. We've met with the principals of all the schools. So I'm very grateful to Andrew and Marina to continue to move that project forward. And then at Henry Whitfield, we are moving forward with the contract for an accepted RFP for the architectural firm to manage the restoration project. This is the project that's funded in part by a National Park Service grant for historic structures that played or will play a role in the commemoration of the semi-sesquicentennial in 2026, which I now can say, you guys. So that's very exciting. So that's all my news, but as always, I'm happy to answer questions, and thanks to everybody.
Thank you, Liz. Item 15, or there's no new business as far as I know, so we'll skip over that one. Item 15, liaison with public and private agencies. Is Jane Montanaro available?
I believe Jane had to leave the meeting earlier.
Okay. So that's our only person under that category. The next item is the public forum. If anybody else has any additional comments. I don't see any hands being raised. Sarah?
Thank you, Paul. So I just wanted to offer you congratulations as you take on your new role. And I know you will do a fantastic job. And I also want to recognize Tom for his always steadfast and deep integrity and his exceedingly thoughtful approach to all things. And thank you both for everything you've been doing.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to second Sarah's comments to both Paul and to Tom.
I'm in favor.
All in favor, say aye, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Our next regularly scheduled council meeting is Wednesday, June 7th, 2023 at 9:30 a.m. And our final item of business is a motion to adjourn, unless there's somebody else that wants to chime in and say something. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Oh, Sorry, I'll second.
All right, we stand adjourned. Thank you all
I'm
so
not
much.
letting that Paul, I'm not letting that linger anymore.
That'll be your legacy, Tom.
Tom was waiting for that one.
All right, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Thank you for your
Thank you, everyone.
patience.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.